Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Orange Peelers. Obviously, if you're listening to this one, no matter where you're listening, it is an audio-only episode. If you're on YouTube, there is no video, and obviously there's no video on the other platforms as normal. It's just me this week, Winston. Zane's not on this week purely because we couldn't get our schedules to align, and that's sort of why there's no video as well. Instead of putting out no episode this week, I thought I'd just do a nice little solo episode, so it shouldn't be too long, and obviously you're probably going to miss Zane's voice, but that's alright. You can only get what you're given. I thought it's better for me to put out something than for you guys to have nothing this week. So shout out to the loyal Orange Peelers listeners. I appreciate you tuning in. We may as well get straight into the round 14 rugby league. The Friday night footy was between the Dragons and the Tigers, and in that one, obviously the Tigers leading at halftime, a very solid first half from them, a pretty average first half to be fair from the Dragons, but the Tigers just fell apart in the second half. Maybe it was a bit of the Dragons, coming alight in the second half. I'm not too sure. You'll be the judge of that one, but either way, the Dragons absolutely tore the Tigers apart in the second half. They dropped, I think it was 42 unanswered points in the second half to run away with a 56-14 win. It was absolutely insane from the Dragons. Obviously, the main talking point out of that game was Zach Lomax. He absolutely dominated that game. I think Ben Hunt had a really good game as well. There were plenty of Dragons players that had good games. Moses Sully. I thought Kyle Flanagan was good. He had a disallowed try in the first half that I personally thought was definitely a try, and yeah, I thought they were a bit unlucky there. Obviously, in the end, it didn't matter too much, but even Graham Annesley, who might be a recurring topic in this episode, but Graham Annesley did come out and say that should have been a try. So shout out to Kyle Flanagan there. I think he got, that would have been his second try, or he got one a bit later. I don't remember exactly, but a bit unlucky there. But as I said, Dragons just way too good in that one. Ben Hunt was in everything. He played Origin, and same with Zach Lomax. They both played Origin 48 hours earlier and still came out and put on those performances. They were absolutely massive. Zach Lomax breaking the Dragons' single-game point-scoring record. It was just really, really good rugby league from the Dragons, and probably a performance that not many people saw coming. I know Dragons were favourites. I sort of thought they were going to win. I tipped Tigers, but that was due to a bit of a theory I had going, and Zane tipped Dragons as well. So I feel like Dragons were expected to win, but just not by the margin that they did win by. So it was, very good for Dragons fans. Obviously, we've had Trademark Sports on here before. You got, I think Julian usually tunes in. There's some Dragons content creators there, and, all the Dragons fans would just be very pleased. The Tigers, on the flip side, though, a very, very rough one for the Tigers, especially having that halftime lead and then blowing it. Obviously, it's not ideal losing, but then to lose in that fashion, blowing a lead and then also conceding 50. Like, losing a second half 42-0 is just really bad. And then off the back of it, they've had a bit of drama this week, I guess you'd have to say, involving Lockie Galvin, who apparently wants out. I think the reports are a bit mixed at the moment. It's sort of hard to actually understand what is happening there. But it does sound like Lockie Galvin wants to leave, and then the Dragons CEO or chairman or someone came out and was just like, no, we're not letting him go. And it could even turn out to be a bit of the hostage situation that you saw with Ben Hunt last year, where I think, to be fair to the Dragons and Ben Hunt's credit, they sort of worked it out, and they seem very happy now, but it could be that awkward situation where, Galvin wants to leave, but the Tigers just don't let him leave, and it's always hard to work out how it's going to play out. So definitely one to watch there, but just hard to get an understanding of what actually is happening. Obviously, Adam Dewey named to return this week for the Tigers, which I will do a preview and my tips this week. I don't have Zane's tips or his 5-4-3-2-1 for this week, but we're just going to roll with the punches and work with what we do have. Shout out to Zane. Hopefully he can answer his messages soon if he's tuning in. Shout out to Zane. But yeah, I guess we'll move on. I don't really have anything else to touch on from that game. We'll move on to the Friday night. Sorry, that was the Friday night footy. We'll move on to the Saturday footy. And it is a shame that Zane isn't here to talk about this game because his South Sydney Rabbitohs absolutely tore apart the Titans. It was a bit tit for tat to start with, but South Sydney definitely, undeniably ran away with it in the end. They scored 46 points, so not quite the Dragons 56, but they won 46-12. There were plenty of big margins on the weekend, actually. Like, plenty. Only 2 games weren't above 30 points. So, so a couple of big games. But, South Sydney started fast. Titans were sort of going with them, and then they just couldn't really hold on anymore. I thought Latrell Mitchell had a really, really good game. Cody Walker had a really good game. I thought Damien Cook even had a good game. All the South Sydney Rabbitohs who are somewhat Origin hopefuls, obviously Damien Cook slowly falling out of that Origin conversation, but especially Cody Walker and especially Latrell Mitchell, who is in the box seat, even before this game was played, was probably in the box seat to get that centre spot with Joseph Suaalii getting suspended. I think, if Latrell Mitchell wasn't already in the box seat, he is now because his performance in this game, he scored the opening try, but just his stats and just his involvement, it was absolutely insane. I've said on the podcast before, and actually I will say, me and Zane have said on the podcast, even through last season, that, South Sydney win games when Latrell Mitchell's involved. They rely on him too much, and maybe it is a bit of a weakness, but when he does get involved and when he does play his part, things like this happen and games like this can happen. Granted, it was only against the Titans, although I do feel, Titans have been all right in the last few weeks, but Latrell Mitchell, he scored the opening try. He had 3 try assists, but the thing that excited me was his runs, and as I was saying before, I interrupted myself with a different train of thought. I've said all season that, Latrell Mitchell, he must be allergic to running over 100 metres because he never cracks 100. He doesn't get involved enough. He doesn't run the ball enough. But in this game, he made a point to get involved. He had 12 runs for 135 metres, including 4 tackle breaks. So he was very, very involved, and that's what South Sydney need. And we said it all last season, but they just need that consistently. He can't just do this every time he wants a rep jersey or just every now and then. He needs to put these performances together on a weekly basis. And I don't doubt that if he comes out this weekend and does it again, I don't doubt that Madger will give him the call for Origin. I think, and we'll do an Origin preview, not next week, but the week after, I guess. We'll do an Origin team list reaction next week, but I think it's between Latrell and Burden for that centre spot. And, Latrell's probably one good performance away from potentially, getting that centre spot. Obviously, Matt Burden, I'm a big Matt Burden fan, in case you didn't know, but I think his versatility probably forces him onto the bench as well. And, I think Latrell Mitchell probably... my game 1 side, I had Latrell Mitchell at centre. Zane had Latrell Mitchell at centre. I know you guys know Zane's a huge Latrell Mitchell fan, so he'd say the same thing, that Latrell's got to be an Origin. On the flip side, obviously, South's very good in that game. On the flip side, the Titans just couldn't quite go with them. It's hard to sort of say what went wrong with the Titans. Obviously, they're missing some players. They had some players come back, though, so it's a bit of a tricky one there. But I just think Souths were too good, and the Titans just couldn't really go with them. We'll move on to the next Super Saturday game. Also, as well, how weird that all the Saturday games were played in Queensland, obviously hosted by Queensland teams. I don't know how often you see that. I don't know if that's the first time it's happened, but we had the Titans hosting a game, the Cowboys hosting a game, and then the Broncos hosting a game. So a bit random, but the Warriors up in Townsville did destroy the Cowboys in the end. Obviously, this was another game where, it seemed a bit tight at first. I thought, although Warriors did score a lot of early points, I thought the Cowboys were in the fight. I think it was 24-6 at halftime, maybe. And even though it was 18 points, it still had that feel where, you felt Cowboys were still in the game. They had to score next, but they just didn't. And then Warriors really did run away with it. I know Cowboys scored a late try, but it was all the Warriors. It was all Tiamari and Martin. He had an absolute blinder, I thought. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak set up an awesome try for Chance Nickel-Klokstad. I thought there were just some really good moments from the Warriors, and we're starting to see them play as the football team that we saw last year. It was a very good performance from the Warriors and not so good from the Cowboys. So I don't have a heap to talk about in this game. As I said, I thought Te Martin was in absolutely everything. I think seeing him have his hands on the ball a lot more than he usually does, and he sort of spoke in the post-game about just getting to have his hands on the ball and doing his job and being more involved. He's sort of enjoying it, and you do see him start to play some better footy. Not that he was playing bad footy, but he's just getting a chance to play some good footy with his hands on the ball. It'll be interesting to see how they go this week, though, because Shaun Johnson does come back into the side. But yeah, as I said, I don't have a whole heap to touch on in this one. It was very entertaining footy, and as I said, I just feel like the Warriors are starting to get back to that side that we saw last year. They were top 4 last year. They made it to a prelim. They did very, very well last year, the Warriors, and it's just so good to see, New Zealand getting behind their team. And there are now rumours that a second New Zealand team will enter the NRL in the next 3 sides that introduce. They've got a plan to go to 20 involving Perth and Papua New Guinea and New Zealand. So, that's a nice little reward for the New Zealand fans. And the Warriors, I'm just looking at the ladder. They currently sit in 10th. They're 1 point outside of the top 8. So very much in the mix. The last Saturday game, as I said, another Queensland game, it was the Broncos and the Sharks. And in my opinion, this was an upset. Obviously, Sharks defeated the Broncos by double digits. They beat them by 10 up in Brisbane with no Nico Hines. Obviously, a couple of Broncos players, backing up from Origin, but at the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you, and it's the Broncos' choice to, use those players. And Kevin Walters actually noted that in his press conference, noted that the only players he thought having a crack for the Broncos were the players that backed up. So you can't really use that as an excuse, can you? So just a really good game from the Sharkies to show that they still very much are a top-tier team. Obviously, they had a couple of rough losses in the last few weeks after a couple good wins against some of the top teams. Sharks are proving that, they can be one of those top teams. They have had a couple of, rough losses, but they've had some good wins, and they're proving that they do deserve to be at the top of the ladder. I don't have them as premiership threats, but I do have them up there. And the Broncos, a rough loss, but I think they'll be all right. I'm not too worried about them. I did say at the start of the year, my hot take was them to miss the top 4, and a hotter take was them to miss the top 8. Missing the top 4, looking a little bit realistic at the moment. I won't be surprised if they do get into the top 4, but yeah, it's just an interesting time at the Broncos at the moment. But I think they should be all right. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say out of this game. I'm trying to think if there's any other real talking points, but nothing I can really think of. Not really. Let's move on to Sunday's games. We had, what was the first Sunday game? Sorry, my app is not working. Here we go. So the first Sunday game was in Melbourne, and that was between the Storm and the Knights. Obviously, the Storm winning. The Knights did put up a bit of a fight, though, and being a biased Bulldogs fan, seeing the Knights score 5 tries against the Melbourne Storm after not being able to score a single try against a decimated Bulldogs side, having players in the sin bin, having players injured, having players out for Origin. Very positive signs for the Bulldogs. Very biased from me there. But the Storm did win this one. Obviously, the last time these two sides played, the Storm did lose. The Storm missing both Munster and Pappenhausen in this game. And the last time they played, they were missing 2 or 3 of those key 4 players. The other 2 being Harry Grant and Jerome Hughes. So a nice little win for the Storm to get one back, on the Knights. And this is actually the first time that the Storm have beaten the Knights since Christian Welch's comments last year, if you remember that in the press conference, when he said about how did the Knights lose to the Panthers, they had nobody, something along those lines. But speaking of Jerome Hughes, I thought he was absolutely sensational in this game. Him and Tyrone Wishart were both very, very good. I thought Tyrone Wishart especially stepped up, scored me a ton of Supercoach points, which I love. But yeah, Jerome Hughes and Tyrone Wishart were standout players for me in this one. I thought they were both very, very good. And the Storm are just somehow flying under the radar, in my opinion. Not a lot of people are talking about them, but they're currently in second, and I very much do think they are a premiership threat, especially Munster comes back after the Origin period. Pappenhausen isn't too far off either. I think still a few weeks, but he'll definitely be back at some stage. So they are shaping up to be can you put them in dark horse areas? I don't know if you can call them a dark horse, but I said at the start of the year that I thought they could threaten to win the comp, and I still think, if it wasn't 2024 and the whole Bulldogs theory, pattern, omen, whatever you want to call it, if that didn't exist, the Storm realistically could win the premiership this year. Maybe they'll be the team to be in the grand final with the Bulldogs. You have to wait and see. But I thought, it wasn't the prettiest of victories for the Storm, but I thought they did well to get the job done. They scored a ton of points. And although they did leak a ton of points, it can, you can look at it positively and negatively. They leaked a ton of points, but they managed to leak a ton of points and then still win the game. They scored plenty. Missing Munster, missing Pappenhausen. I thought it was very good from them. And the Knights, there are positives out of this one. Obviously, I thought Fletcher Sharp on debut was fantastic. He's very Ryan Pappenhausen-like. He loves to throw himself into the action and just have an absolute crack, which, you love to see. I thought Dylan Lucas for the Knights at centre was very good. He's sort of been back row this year. He's on the bench this week, but him at centre, I thought he did a really good job. Gagai was good. Hastings, despite being an absolute grub as always, especially at the end of the game, he, set up a few tries, but just not enough from the Knights, unfortunately for them. And it's a couple of losses in back-to-back weeks now, so interesting to see how they move forward. Obviously, a bit of news around David Armstrong this week as well, having re-signed, and now it's rumoured that he might actually be off to the Lee Leopards, is what I've read on Twitter earlier today. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but it looks like, he might not want to be sitting under Kalen Ponga, especially with Fletcher Sharp coming out as well. Fletcher Sharp named ahead of David Armstrong this week. Obviously, Armstrong, he got injured though. He wasn't ruled. He wasn't replaced. He was injured and got withdrawn due to injury. So just a weird situation there. But Fletcher Sharp, definitely one to watch for the future. He was exciting to watch. The other Sunday game, let me have a look as my NRL app fails me again. This is very much a unprofessional podcast, but that's what you get when you pay the big bucks. The other game was Panthers and Manly. Panthers winning this one 32-22, and this is just another game that was super high scoring. Obviously, Manly came out and stunned the Penrith crowd a little bit early on. I think they led 18-6 or something. Tommy Talau scored a first half hat-trick, ended up scoring 4, and Brian To'o on the other end scored 3. I think if there's anything to note in this game, it's the fact that Ruben Garrick just can't goal kick anymore. His goal kicking ability was as if he was in a rugby league version of Space Jam, and the Monsters had taken his goal kicking superpowers because he could not kick a goal. It was obviously he did kick 1 or 2, but it should have been way closer than it was, to be honest. I think he ended up missing 4 in the end, so not the best night for Ruben Garrick, but Panthers just too good. I thought Manly did well to take it to him. I think Panthers sort of ran away with it in the end, scored a couple, 1 or 2 late tries that sort of sealed it. But Manly were in the fight, and they didn't go away, and I thought that was really good for Manly. Obviously, Manly beat Panthers earlier in the year as well. I thought, positives for both sides. I think Panthers arguably still the team to beat, the form team of the comp. Obviously, when you're 3-time back-to-back premiers, you're going to be the team to beat. But even without Cleary, missing a couple of key players, I think they probably are still, maybe not the form team of the comp, but honestly, you'd almost have to say they are. Melbourne and Sharks are the other teams up there, and Dolphins, but it's hard to put any of those above the Panthers. I guess maybe Storm. It's a very tight competition this year. I think that's the moral of the story here. But Panthers in Penrith, too good. I saw a stat that they hadn't lost back-to-back Penrith games in ages. I don't remember the exact figure, but it was a long time. And after a pretty embarrassing loss to the Dragons the week before, missing Origin players. Dragons missing Origin players as well, though. Panthers did bounce back and get the chocolates over Manly. So well done to the Panthers. I'm trying to think of any standout players. There wasn't really any standouts for me. Obviously, as I said, To'o and Talau bagging a bunch of meat pies did very well. And players like Luai and Cherry Evans backing up from Origin and doing a job I thought were very good. There was a weird moment between, I think it was Luai and Brooks. It was definitely Luke Brooks where, Luke Brooks had a bit of a brain fight and tried to pick a fight with Luai instead of defending a try. And that was probably the moment that sealed the game when Liam Henry crashed over. So, a bit of a weird one there from Luke Brooks. But I think it's time to move to the game that you're all here to listen to. Let's be real. It was the Bulldogs and the Eels King's birthday clash. And let's be honest, the only reason I've sat down here and recorded this podcast by myself instead of doing no podcast is because I just wanted to sit here and talk about this game. The Bulldogs, an absolute miracle win. Miracle maybe a bit too far, but just a gutsy win, and they pulled a rabbit out of the hat. They had 9 penalties go against them. I think the final penalty count was 9-4. It was 9-1 at some stage. They had 3 forwards go off injured, 2 concussed. Jacob Preston rolled his ankle. Luckily, it's not a broken ankle. It's just a strain. He's only out. He's still out for a few weeks, up to a month, but not as long as it could have been. But the Bulldogs, they lost the penalty count by a lot. They had 3 players get injured. They had a man get sin binned at one stage. Ironically, Kurt Mann, that A man, they had the man get injured. Kurt Mann got, not injured, sorry, sin binned. I'm in all sorts. But despite everything going against them, they showed that this season they are a resilient team, and they're a team that's going to keep turning up, and they're going to play till the end. And not only did they just keep playing till the end, like they were down 18-10 with 25 minutes left. And if that was the Bulldogs last year, they concede 40 points in this game easily. They would have got flogged if it was last year. But this year, they are proving, unbiasedly, they're proving that they're a side that is going to turn up, and they're going to just keep turning up no matter what goes against them. They're a very resilient side. It's very dogs of war. It's cliche, but it really is. And I was super proud of them to go from 18-10 down, losing 3 players, having a man in the sin bin, all these penalties against them. And obviously, like, I'm not trying to say, the ref was being unfair or anything. Most of the time when you're losing a penalty count, it is your own fault. But that's still adversity that they had to face. They had 5 disallowed tries through the game as well. Some controversial, some not as controversial. But to cross the line 5 times and just to have all these things go against them and then still win, it was absolutely sensational. I thought immediately as the game ended that it was a better game. I don't know how to word it. Like, not necessarily a better game, but like the way I was feeling after this game, I was happier and just more ecstatic at the end of this one than when Matt Burton kicked the match-winning field goal against the Cowboys last year. Like, this was such a huge win for the Bulldogs for very different reasons to that one. Obviously, forget about who it's against. Obviously, Parramatta, arch rivals. But just the importance of this win, where if they lost, they would have been in 11th and stuck in all that congestion, or even stuck behind all the congestion around the bottom of the 8. They won. They're now in 7th spot, heading into a bye. And they can actually jump into the top 4 next weekend, which is just insane to think about. But just the way they won as well. As I said, down 18-10 to score 2 tries in the final 15 minutes with everything stacked against them. It was just a remarkable victory. I'm almost still in disbelief. Like, at 18-10, there was a part of me that, I don't know if it was just me being too optimistic or, I don't know, but there was a part of me that was like, they can still win this, but it just, I want to say that it didn't feel like they were going to, but there was a part of me that believed, and maybe that's just me being delusional or optimistic. I don't know. But for them to win the game from the position they were in, it was really this key moment in time where you go, okay, the Bulldogs, they really are back. There's been some wins the past month or so, or just this season, especially last week against the Knights when they won 32-2 in the rain with the Origin players missing. And that was a huge, huge win. And then to roll that into this week's performance, and it's just back-to-back season-defining wins. And genuinely, and I don't, like, if you're thinking, Winston, you're just so biased and you're off your head. I don't care. I really do think this is such a big moment of the season. And if we get to September and the Bulldogs are playing finals footy, you can look back at this game and you can look back at this 2-week period of the Knights and the Eels games and go, that's where their season was not necessarily flipped, but like that was a key moment in the season where they said, no, we are a top 8 team. We are a finals footy team. And you're seeing more and more in the media, everyone's starting to talk about the Dogs as a final team. The drums are beating, Belmore's back. It's awesome. And to have 45,000 people turn out to the game as well was insane. It's the biggest crowd since 2014 for a New South Wales game, like a game played in New South Wales. And I'll give you a stat. You might have seen this on our socials already if you follow Orange Peelers on Instagram. But the last time the Bulldogs had a crowd of 40,000 or more against the Eels, it was 2004, and they did go on to win the comp. So add that to the list of all the reasons why the Dogs are going to be 2024 premiers. But just an insane game. I thought some standout players for me. Connor Tracy at fullback was sensational. Set up plenty of tries. Tore apart that right edge of the Eels. And talk about tearing apart the right edge of the Eels. Stephen Crichton, Captain Critter, he was instrumental as well. He was so good. I could sit here and talk all day about all the reasons why Critter was good. Because it wasn't just on the ball that he's good. His captaincy and his leadership off the ball. He just brings so much to the side. And he's got to be signing of the year. He is just so good. As I said, I could sit here and talk all day. I'm not going to. This is meant to be an NRL podcast, not a Bulldogs podcast. And if Zane was here next to me, we probably wouldn't even be talking about the Bulldogs anymore because I would, you got to move on. Zane would pull me up and he'd say, Winston, that's enough. You're rambling, you're yapping, it's too much. But, yeah, I just thought it was an insane victory for the Dogs. For the Eels, I didn't even think the Eels were that bad, especially the first half. I thought they were quite good. I thought Mitch Moses had a really good game. Obviously failed to close it out. He had an 8-point lead and failed to deliver, but I did think he was pretty good, and he'd definitely be my New South Wales halfback for game 2. Gutho at the end of the game had a huge sook to the referee, and I don't understand how he doesn't get in trouble for what he said. He said something along the lines of, it's a horror. He was complaining about the last try. He thought there was an obstruction in the lead-up, which today Graham Annesley has come out and said, there was no issues with it. But Gutho, in the moment, even after the game had ended, he was still complaining because that's what him and Mitch Moses do. They just constantly complain. It's bizarre how much they actually complain and throw their hands up in the air. If you go and watch the Eels live, like you see it on TV a little bit, but in person, it is actually just astronomical the amount of times they throw their hands in the air complaining. But yeah, they both were complaining late post-game, and Gutho was saying something like, they're going to come out tomorrow and they're going to say that it should have been a try and it's should have been no try and it's going to cost us the game. And then today being the next day, they came out and actually said that it was the right call. So sucked in, Gutho. You got that one wrong, bruh. As the referee said, do better as a captain, especially in your 200th. On your birthday as well, mate. King's birthday. I guess it was Max King's birthday after all. I'll move on from that game because, not everyone's a Bulldog fan listening to this, and I could just go all day. But I'm going to move on to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s for this week. As I said, Zane, I did ask him to send them in, and he hasn't opened the message, which, come on, Zane, be better. Nah, jokes. So this is my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you go to our Instagram, if you don't follow us, and I'll have Zane's up there in a graphic somewhere. But my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I had Connor Tracy with 1 point. As I said, I thought he was so good. I had Taumaro Martin with 2 points. I went Latrell Mitchell with the 3 points. Zach Lomax, very unlucky not to be my player of the week. Call me biased, but I have gone Stephen Crichton with the 5 points. So that's Tracy, Taumaro Martin, Latrell Mitchell, Zach Lomax, and Critter are my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s. I'm keen to hear what Zane's are, so we can determine the player of the week, but I do dare say he'll have Latrell Mitchell at 5, and then probably, I reckon he'll almost go Lomax at 4, and Critter might be up there as well for him. So I think it could almost be a tie between Lomax and Critter, depending on who Zane goes with. If he goes Lomax at 5, then Lomax is going to be player of the week, but I think it's definitely between Critter, Lomax, or Latrell Mitchell as player of the week. And if Zane does go in the order I think he will, being Latrell with 5, Lomax 4, and Critter 3, that'll mean it's a 3-way tie for player of the week. So that'll be very, very interesting. Let's move on to this week's games, I suppose. Actually, no, let's circle back quickly. We'll do Kit of the Week, brought to you by the Vintage Thread. Make sure you go check out the Vintage Thread on Instagram, the Vintage Thread _ They do NRL graphic tees. You can tell them, make this player, and they'll do it. Use code HOTDOG, you get a bit of a discount. But Kit of the Week, brought to you by the Vintage Thread for me. Despite losing, I thought the Eagles wearing their heritage jersey was Kit of the Week. And disappointing that the Bulldogs didn't seize the moment and wear their 2004 heritage. It would have been cool to see the early thousands Eagles up against the early thousands Bulldogs, but in a rivalry game as well. But it is what it is. Maybe next year. Let's get into our tips. Thursday night, it's the Sharks and the Dolphins. Obviously, Zane's not here to toss up his predictions, and I also didn't go over last week's. I've just realised I didn't even do last week's winner and loser. So let me quickly look at that, and I'll see if I can suss out who won. So I don't even know if I can find it. How many games were there? Am I looking? I'm trying to find it on my phone, and I'm not convinced that I'm in the right one. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to leave that. But I will backtrack and make sure that next week that's all updated correctly. Same with the leaderboard this week. I didn't do a graphic for that last week, but I'll be all on top of it. Don't worry. Excuse me. So this week's games, starting off Thursday night footy at Shark Park between obviously the Sharks and they take on the Dolphins. I'm going to go the Sharks in that one. Tempted to go the Dolphins. You know what? No, I'm going to go the Dolphins. I'm going to go the Dolphins for the upset. Apologies to Sharks fans, but I don't know why. Just got a feeling the Dolphins can get that one done. I'm going to go Dolphins 1-12, and I'm going to go, obviously, Jake Averillo to score a try. Raiders and Cowboys in the nation's capital. Sorry, I'm just thinking. If Bulldogs want top 4, I need the Sharks to win that. So I'm actually going to go, I'm going to stick with the Dolphins. I'm not going to be biased towards the Bulldogs. I was going to go and just tip everything the Bulldogs need to happen to be top 4, but we won't do that. Raiders, Cowboys in the nation's capital. I think this could be a very good game. If it was in North Queensland, I'd tip the Cowboys, but because it's in Canberra, I'm going to go with Canberra off the bye. I'll go Canberra 1-12, and I'm going to go Xavier Savage, a safe option to score the try, but yeah, that'll be a good game of football. And then it's Rabbitohs hosting the Broncos at Accor. Zane will be at that one, so if you see him there, go say hi to him. Tell him to do better at hosting podcasts. If he could actually host this week's episode, it would have been nice. Obviously, the reason he's not here, we couldn't line up our schedule. That's not his fault, but it'd be funny if you tell him that it is his fault. So if you see him at the game, let him know. But Rabbitohs, Broncos the favourites in that one, and I will go with the Broncos. Obviously, Latrell Mitchell origin audition, but I think the Broncos bounce back and win this one. I'm going to go Broncos. I'm going to go 1-12, and I'm going to go Dean Mariner to score another winger. Nice, safe option. Then the Tigers, they host the Titans at Leichhardt. Very hard to tip the Tigers off the back of last week's performance and with all their drama, so I'm not going to. I'm actually going to tip the Titans in that one, and I'm going to go the Titans 1-12 again. And my try scorer in this one, maybe we get somebody a little bit more smoky than just a winger. Tempted to go Khan Pereira, but he's a winger. Bit lazy of me. Let's go Cleese Haas. Cleese Haas, nice and smoky. Warriors up against the Storm. This one is a flip of the coin job. It's in New Zealand at a sold-out Go Media Stadium. Oh, Sean Johnson's back. I'm going to go the Wars. I'm going to go the Warriors to beat the Storm in New Zealand. I just feel like Storm still missing Munster, still missing Paps. They just weren't... They're missing... They've got Grant Anderson and Iremia. Sorry, I think I've said his name wrong, but Dean Iremia at centre line. They're missing some troops. So I'm actually going to go the Warriors to win that one with Sean Johnson back. And I'll go Sean Johnson to score the try in his return game. I'm going to go 1-12 there as well. Picking lots of 1-12s this week. Eels, Roosters at CommBank Stadium. I'm going to tip the Eels in this one for the upset. I think Eels, I don't think they were that bad against the Dogs. And the Roosters, I don't know, against the Cowboys, missing their origin players, they were a little bit shaky. They're missing Suaalii. I don't know, there's been a bit of drama as well with Brandon Smith this week. I just gut feeling. I'm going to tip the Eels to beat the Roosters for the upset. I'll go 1-12 in that one as well. And my try scorer, it is at CommBank. I'm going to have to go Micah Sevo. I'm going to go Micah Sevo. And then Sunday Rugby League, we head off to Brookvale Oval. Manly up against the Dragons. Obviously, the Dragons shocked the Rugby League world and beat Manly earlier in the season. I think at Brookie, it's going to be sold out. I'm going to go Manly to win that one, but never count the Dragons out. I think they're doing all right this year, but I will go Manly to win, especially that Manly took it to Penrith. I'm going to go Manly 13+, to be honest, on a Sunday afternoon at Brookie, and I'm going to go Daly Cherry Evans to score a try on that one. And then the second last game of the week, Knights up against the Panthers in Newcastle. Panthers heavy favourites, and for good reason. I'm going to go the Panthers to win. I'm going to go Panthers 13+. Did consider 1-12. I'm going to go 13+. And then I'm going to go, let's go to Ruva. No, I'm just thinking like when Bulldogs played Knights, Addo Carr scored a couple. So I'm going to go the left winger. I'm going to go Brian Toto to score in that one. Very lazy picking try scorers this week. Lots of wingers from me, but I'm going to go Panthers 13+. Toto anytime. And then game of the week. Bulldogs up against the bye. Obviously, last time they played, Bulldogs did win 100-0. And I expect the exact same thing to happen. I think Dogs dominate that one. I don't even think the bye will score a single point. I think Dogs too good for that one. That is Orange Peelers this week. If you did get to the end of the audio-only episode, I thank you very much for tuning in. If you did get to the end of the episode with no Zane, I thank you very much. Obviously, Zane's the reason you guys come to the podcast and listen, so I appreciate it. If you listen to the whole episode without him, we'll be back to normal next week. Video episode, both of us will be here. I apologize on behalf of both of us for not having a video and not having both of us here, but just some scheduling conflicts this week. It's the first time we've had a scheduling conflict in nearly, 1.5 years of the podcast. So we're doing all right. But thank you for tuning in. You can't see it, but I am doing the little salute sign off. Let's trot, baby.